For those of you who care about football and college football, my Syracuse Orange are undefeated and playing against undefeated Clemson today. So, yeah, they weren't expected to do anything this year. At any rate, let's have a seat.
Yeah.
Okay. So, Bobby, you had come from a e-commerce background. We're doing work with Walmart, and all of a sudden, you're in China starting the first major Bitcoin exchange in 2012, 2013?
Yeah, that's right.
So how did that happen?
Like a decade ago.
A decade ago.
I now that I think about it, I wouldn't have predicted I'd be on stage a decade later. But it was old days. I remember first started mining Bitcoin in 2011, and back then it was GPU mining just getting started. So put my own PC together, put in some graphics cards, and I was living in Shanghai at the time. And then I left Walmart e-commerce in the end of 2012, and I promised myself a year and a half earlier when I first got into Bitcoin that this is such an intriguing field. Cryptocurrency, decentralized. It certainly wasn't as big as it is today, right? It was just a concept. But I promised myself if I ever started a company, I would do it in Bitcoin. And sure enough, a year and a half later, by late 2012, I had an opportunity. I told my wife I wanted to do a startup, control my own destiny, and do it in Bitcoin. And it was a crazy idea. Moving to China was a crazy idea, number one. And then doing a Bitcoin startup was crazy idea, number two. So I ended up doing that.
Combine them and move to China to do a Bitcoin
in China.
In China.
Yeah, that's a mother of all crazy ideas. So I got lucky. I'm here with you, not in some jail in China. So I had to navigate that carefully, right? There's certain things I could have done wrong and got myself in trouble. Because at the time, I was more naive. Bitcoin today, we all know, is very much financial instrument, financial regulatory circle. Back then it was no different than setting up an online email account like Hotmail, right? It was just an online sort of login password kind of thing. So in any case, I did actually think about launching a wallet back in 2012, 2013, but I ended up partnering with two guys and we launched BTC China, which was the very first Bitcoin exchange in China. And at the time, we didn't think China would necessarily be a large market, but by the end of that year, China became the world's largest by trading volume. BTC China became number one. MTGOX had its issues, so sort of it was just the stars aligned, and we took the mantle of being the world's largest by trading volume. And it's actually it turns out it's the sort of king of the hill rotation kind of thing. So every few years, there's a new king on the hill. So I don't know, which is the biggest exchange today? Binance. So my personal prediction is that it rotates every few years. So whether it's a Binance today, it was Bitfinex, it was BTC China, MTGOX. At one point, it was Bitstamp. It was so I think
FTX is certainly
FTX
with
coming
bullet.
up. Yep. Crypto.com. So they're all sort of vying for that. Having been there, done that, I would say there's no need to be number one. There really isn't, except for bragging rights. But I don't know if you want to talk about just my experience running an exchange.
Yes.
Yeah, there's some dirty secrets in running an exchange. How many of you run an exchange? Oh, really? A few. Okay, that's surprising. As big as Binance? Okay. So maybe you know this or not. It's actually quite tough running an exchange, and the reason is because in the end, it's a financial institution. We know that now. It is, for sure. And unfortunately, the existing world, is slow to catch up. So the regulations, the law, the KYC procedures, the due diligence, all that hasn't caught up. I remember distinctly going to banks in Hong Kong in 2013, asking to open bank accounts, saying that we're an exchange, regulate us, we'll do KYC, all that. They're like, nah, just go away. They don't even give you time of day. We opened a business account, and anyways, it was just the pre-early days, right? And we remember going to Singapore to do the same thing, the MAS and all that. It's like, no. So today, they're serious now, whether it's Singapore, Hong Kong, or China, they got serious in closing it down. The US, right? FinCEN, state money transmitter licenses and all that stuff. The point is, even though they're getting in touch with it, but the reality is still behind. That's why you have regulatory arbitrage. That's why you have some exchanges going to do things that are perceived to be crossing the line. I won't name any names, but a lot of exchanges will do things. Whether it start in the early days, margin lending was a iffy thing. These days, issuing security tokens, launching coins, those are iffy topics. NFT trading. So it's always at the forefront of the technology. The technology is always at the forefront, and the regulation is always slow to catch up. So by the time they catch up, either you've crossed the line and you're going to get penalized or whatever, and some people have to resign. We've seen plenty of CEOs have to resign and leave, right? Cough, cough. Which one I'm thinking of? I won't name names, but or you stay clean and then you find out that you're not competitive because your competitors are playing dirty. So that's what's really tough about that business. Yeah. So so despite what people say badly about the SEC and the CFTC, I think that if they do come in and sort of set real rules that everyone can play with, I think that's going to be good for the industry. It's just that when the rules aren't there, then the risk is,
of course the problem that I have sometimes when they set the rules in favor of the incumbents. So in other words, like, oh, you have to be a bank to do anything, and we don't need any more banks. We're not going to approve banks that are not already not already there.
That is tough. I see that point. But I also predict the incumbents will actually wisen up and they're going to acquire the crypto companies and then offer crypto services. And I think we're seeing that happen already. I'm excited about that.
We certainly saw it with, Consensus basically, instead of being stomped on by JP Morgan basically funded Consensus and rolled Quorum into Consensus rather than swallowing it up and shutting it down like incumbents often do.
Yeah. So I think we're still in the early innings, right? Yeah. We're maybe second or third inning at best, right? Like, think about all the technologies, whether it's television, internet. These are multi-decade technologies.
I think if
right?
you're following adoption curves, Vitalik's dad, Dmitry, has a great chart that was following adoption of Bitcoin and layering it over internet users.
Oh yeah.
And we're in 1997.
Oh yeah. Yeah, we're pre the big boom, right? We're definitely that. And then remember, every time there's a big boom, there's a bust that comes. So wait for that. I personally think
Isn't this the bust right now?
No, this is not it. This is just like trepidations in the early, like until Bitcoin price crosses $1 million, we're way early. Think about it. When Bitcoin gets to $1 million, all the value of Bitcoin is only 20 trillion.
That's double what gold is, basically.
Well, gold will be higher by then too. But my point is 20 trillion, 10, 20 years ago was a lot of money. But 20 trillion in today's world, 20 trillion in 5 years, 10 years world is nothing. Like global asset classes will go to 500 trillion, even 1 quadrillion by then. Think about all the real estate, all the stock market, all that. They'll go to in the quadrillions. Today, those are about $200 trillion each. Real estate globally. Take all the real estate, all the apartment buildings, single family homes, office buildings, all of that in all the countries, all the cities ever added together, over 200 trillion. You take all the stock market, all the US stock market, NASDAQ, New York Stock Exchange, all the European stock market, Japan, Brazil, all the stock markets, all the stocks, all the companies, market value over 200
So how many
trillion.
years until we get to 1 million? Because people thought I was crazy saying that we'd be at 100,000 in the next 5 years.
Yeah, someone said he's going to eat his dick, but then he died. So I won't make that prediction. You guys know about this, right? No? Someone said he's going to eat his dick if Bitcoin doesn't get to $1 million by.
Oh, right. Mr. McAfee, who actually was one of our Fireside chats in 2019 from an unknown location.
Oh, is that right?
Yes.
Yeah. So is he still around or is he really dead?
Depends who you ask.
Yeah. I predict there's going to be more of that. More of the OG people sort of dying. Yeah.
Well, let's go for 100,000. When do you think we're going to be at 100,000?
100,000. This year, this is going to be a tough year. This year,
we're not in the cycle yet.
Yeah, this year's going to be tough. I think we're not going to see Bitcoin break out of this cycle until 2023 at the earliest. We're seeing the real estate market, the stock market going through
Well,
big
tell me
reverberations.
about. I mean, I'm
So 100,000 Bitcoin, maybe at the best at the best late 2023, more likely late 2024.
because after the halving.
After the halving. So the halving is a big impetus for prices to go up. But I've always observed a delayed effect. I think people get ahead of themselves. And
Well, I mean, I was going to say, I mean, this last wave had several different theories, right? Because you definitely saw diminishing returns each cycle. You had, prior to the first halving, you went from like tenths of a penny to $30, and then it crashed down to $1. So that was like, exponential zeros. And then, when I got in, it went from like $11 in January of 2013 to $1,200 by the end of the year.
Yep.
100x in 1 year. I don't think we're ever going to do 100x in 1 year again.
not anymore.
But you still end up having that the high was always in the fourth quarter, but you still ended up having what could be perceived as elongated cycles, where it was 12 months for the first halving to high, and then it was 18 months to go from 600 to 19,000, so only 30x. And so when we were at then the next halving in May 2020, the question was it going to go and be another year after fourth quarter, or was it going to be what I thought was more logical? Well, 12 months for 100x, 18 months for 30x. Gee, how about 24 months for 10x? And so I thought we had one more pop up to 100K or close to
This
it, or
year?
80K. No, this past year.
This past year.
And I think maybe we would have gotten it if there wasn't a war and there wasn't the Fed stepping in. Well, Elon too. Elon definitely. Well, we ended up being ahead of ourselves because we went all the way up to the 60s ahead of schedule. It was not even a year after the halving when April hit, and then it got whacked down, and they came and meekly went up to the all-time high in November of this past year. Literally, this CoinAgenda a year ago, we were over 60,000.
Yes, that's right.
And now we're under 20,000.
Yeah. So just hold steady, right? So I was saying, before our talk, conviction. I think it's important to think back. For I assume all of us here hold Bitcoin, and we're holding it not because we're short-term day trading it, but rather we have long-term conviction in it, and we still do, right? Regardless of the wars, regardless of the stock market, the interest rates, right? What's great about Bitcoin is it's really held steady. In US dollars, it hasn't broken out of the $18,000, $22,000 range, correct? In the last 6 months, it has not broken out. However, if you live in Europe, if you live in Asia, compared to your local currency, Bitcoin has actually appreciated 30-40%, because the US dollar against all those other major currencies they've all fallen by the wayside. The US dollar has really strengthened 30-40% against all the major currencies, and Bitcoin has held steady to that. So it really, I have over the last 11 years, I've had stronger and stronger conviction in Bitcoin the more I understand it. In fact, I'm learning more about it every year as it goes along. So it's not like I'm an expert or anything. I'm still a student in the world of Bitcoin.
So Bitcoin versus everything else, what do you see as where Ethereum is, say, when Bitcoin's 6 figures?
So Ethereum and Bitcoin, I do, for disclosure, I own Bitcoin obviously a lot more, and I do own some Ethereum. But to me, they're different. They're different asset classes. Bitcoin is what we call a monetary instrument. It's probably the world's best and most pure monetary instrument for the first time in humanity. Okay, Ethereum is more like a commodity where you're using it to do something else, kind of like petroleum, oil. You're using it to do something else. It's kind of like energy, right? You're using it to perform something else, and the something else used to be issuing of ICO tokens, ERC20, and now lately it's been it's gone through the DeFi phase, staking and all that, DAOs, and now it's going through the NFT phase. And I'm sure with smart contracts, you can do a lot of good things later, new things that we can't think of today. There's SBTs. Have you heard of that? Soul-bound tokens, NFTs that don't move. So they're all getting weird in concept and stuff like that. But the point is,
weird name too.
Weird name. I don't know who came up with that.
Vitalik.
So the point is, Ethereum is, in my mind, it's not a monetary instrument. I think Bitcoin is.
Well, I think one of the analogies was
monetary good.
Bitcoin is digital gold and Ethereum is digital oil.
Yeah, that's a good analogy. I would subscribe to that.
Although I just came, back from Amsterdam with the Bitcoin Europe 2022, which was like the Woodstock for maximalists. And, they're still looking to go and put EVM on top of Bitcoin. They're still looking to go and build things of smart contracts on top of Taproot. It's certainly taking a long time, but they're like still saying everything's been done on Ethereum can be done better on Bitcoin. Your thoughts?
I don't know if I'm going to get in trouble saying that. I don't think it's needed, personally. However, I don't mind them doing it because it's not going to affect my Bitcoin, right? So it's free. Do whatever you want. You could use gold to create whatever things you want out of gold, and that's what you do with your gold. And what I do with my gold is I have full control over it, right? So in my mind, Ethereum has been a good thing to do what they want to do, right, to party in their world, and I don't think Bitcoin needs to copy that per se. Yeah.
Okay.
And what I do know is no one else can claim to be the number one in terms of what Bitcoin does as a monetary good, right? I think that's the I saw that in a which report was it? Fidelity. I think Fidelity issued a really good report about Bitcoin a few months ago. They talk about Bitcoin as a monetary good, and I think that's really straight to the point.
Well, we did have this thing 4 years ago that was called the flippening. That what would happen to perception of Bitcoin if Ethereum had a higher market cap? Never happened. But
I could care less. What would happen if real estate overtook Bitcoin? It's already above Bitcoin.
Yeah.
What would happen if gold overtook Bitcoin? It's already more than Bitcoin. Does it make me believe less in Bitcoin? And there are people out there who say, oh, Bitcoin's not regulated, not fully appreciated and allowed by governments. I'm like, you could wait for that day. And when that day comes, Bitcoin will be well over $1 million. And that's when you want to invest, which is fine. It'll be lower risk at that point, but also much lower returns, right?
Well, like with JP Morgan, with Jamie Dimon said he would fire anybody stupid enough to hold Bitcoin at JP Morgan. It was $500, and then JP Morgan ended up buying a bunch. And, it'll be certainly safe and recommended for all of its top clients as a stable asset class when it's at $1 million or even $100,000. Because they'll have it.
Yeah, he's really sneaky. Yeah. He's trying to misdirection.
What do you think about sovereign wealth funds? When are they going to get involved in having Bitcoin instead of gold?
I think they will. So here's what happened recently, right? We have El Salvador and Central African Republic. So in the last 12, 18 months, we finally had 2 countries turn Bitcoin into legal tender. And in the last 2-3 years, aside from MicroStrategy, Tesla, we now have corporations buying Bitcoin and holding it on their balance sheet. That's amazing. This is so great. I mean, I remember, 9 years ago at the San Jose, the San Jose Bitcoin conference. I met a bunch of you.
The first Bitcoin Foundation conference.
Yeah, yes. Exactly. And
I think it's where we met too.
Back then it was so fun back then, right? We were all just kids, dreaming about this, and to think that S&P 500 companies will hold Bitcoin on their balance sheet. It's like, wow. It's like it still hasn't hit me, or it still hasn't.
It was $120 Bitcoin in the San Jose, and then it ended up dropping down to $60 during the summer on the news that California had issued a warning to the Bitcoin Foundation. They wanted to know why they didn't have a money transfer license.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, everybody's like, "Up, Bitcoin's dead. They don't have a money transfer license." Blah blah blah. And all the lawyers for the Bitcoin Foundation came back and said, "Because we don't transfer money, we simply accept it for donations."
Yes.
They never answered that.
Yeah.
But the damage was done. It was down to $60, and I remember going to present in New York. That was the first. That same week was the first Inside Bitcoins New York. And I remember going, besides speaking on that panel, I also went to speak at the New York Angels. And they asked me to speak after some starving startup was speaking about some bicycle app they had where they were looking for $10 million. I'm telling 100 investors about how amazing Bitcoin is. They should look at it as a new asset class. Literally nobody had any questions.
Yeah.
They looked at me like I was out of my mind. And after I spoke, I had one person come up to me, and it was an elderly gentleman who said, "Son, I'm a retired economics professor at Princeton, and I've looked at this Bitcoin, and the only thing it's good for is drugs and prostitution. Get the hell away from it as fast as you can." That was where we were in 2013.
That was the prevailing mentality. So now we have companies getting into it. We have countries making a legal tender. And I think next step is for countries to hold it, whether it's part of the sovereign wealth fund or even hold it as a national reserve, right? So we're in America, the US dollar is global standard, so we don't see this. But the reality is all the other foreign countries out there actually hold US dollars, they hold euros as part of the foreign reserves. And today, none of that is Bitcoin. But I think it's going to start to happen. Especially, I've heard countries, I'm sure it was Bulgaria, Romania, where they've seized, $100 million worth of Bitcoin. Now it's $1 billion. So countries that have seized Bitcoin or that have Bitcoin on their balance sheet are starting to see that in billions and if not trillions of dollars in value. So I think it's a matter of time.
They're now kind of like regretting auctioning off
that's
the
right.
Silk Road proceeds for $700.
It was only $3,000, right?
It was, I think, $700.
$700.
That was 30,000 Bitcoin. That was Tim Draper bought it.
Yeah. What a good deal.
Yeah.
Yeah, and there's gonna be more of that. There's gonna be more seizures of crypto, and there's gonna be more auctioning it off and all that. I mean, the fact that they're auctioning it off tells you that it's real.
So what's going on with Mt. Gox? Are you have any insights on that? I know that they're getting ready to either distribute it or they're not going to auction it.
So for good or bad, I never got involved. I never had my money on Mt. Gox. So I haven't always followed that closely, but it always seems like, it's going to come out. The money's going to come out soon. So who's gotten money back from Mt. Gox? You have? They say they will give you back, so you haven't yet. Right, so it's like a carrot. They're teasing you with it. Yeah. Paper, yeah. So I don't know. I don't have a strong opinion on that. I hope people get some money back. But on that note, let me say something. If you ever find yourself in the position of having lost some Bitcoins, either rendered inaccessible or stolen, the best course of action is always to use your money and buy back the amount. And because the reason is, if you held Bitcoin to begin with, you have a long-term appreciation of its value in the long term. So you want to be invested in the long term. So if you ever lose it, whether it's $1,000 or $10,000, buy it back and lock in the loss amount. What's
or
worse,
$24 million, but we'll talk about that later.
Yeah, what's worse is if you don't buy it back, you've lost a Bitcoin. If Bitcoin keeps going up, your loss in dollar figures keeps going up and up and up. And that can really cause disillusionment, right? So that's a lesson learned if you guys want to think about that. I hope it doesn't happen to anyone, but you want to share your experience?
Oh, we're doing that later in the day.
Okay.
But yeah, and so let's before we get the panel up, let's talk a little bit about what you're doing now with Ballet and with the book and sort of kind of your kind of vision for like everybody at every level needing to be able to have some Bitcoin. Your business card even has sats on it.
So one thing is, I'm really proud to share with you my new book. It's called The Promise of Bitcoin. It's available on Amazon. It's in hard copy. It's a Wall Street Journal bestseller. And it's on Kindle for ebook. And then recently this year just released the audiobook. So I had the pleasure and the privilege to narrate this book myself. Apparently they're going to get a professional narrator, and I really asked if I could do it myself. And apparently my English is good enough, so they let me read my own book. Mm-hmm. And it took a whole week. It took 6 days. And it's like about 9 hours of audiobook. The reason I wrote the book, started this project 3-4 years ago. It took a good 2.5 years, and then COVID years really gave me the time to finish it up. The reason I wrote it is, over the years, people have always asked me, Bobby, I can see that you're such a big believer in Bitcoin. Can you tell me more? Where can I learn more? And I've never had a good place to point them, nor did I have 15 hours to sit down and tell them, every person I meet. So I finally get to write this book, put all my thoughts in one book, and now it's just really easy. Go buy my book and read it. And then after you read it, then feel free to come back with questions, and I'll be happy to discuss with you. So if you've read my book, or if you promise to read it, I'll give you my business card. My business card is a new business card from Ballet. It comes with Bitcoin loaded, 10,000 Satoshis. Okay, it's only $2 worth of Bitcoin today, but hopefully one day it'll go up in price so that maybe it'll buy you a steak dinner. So a small cup of coffee today turned into a large steak dinner one day, if you have the patience. And this is the business card that you probably won't throw away. Yeah. And my new company is called Ballet. We make hardware wallets, and I'm pleased to I'm gonna give these out to people who come over and get a copy of my book. So I'm not charging for anything. You get a free book. Come by during lunch. I'll sign it for you, and then we'll also give you a Ballet wallet. It's a special edition, CoinAgenda, Las Vegas 2022.
Wow.
And this is not sold, so you can only get it here.
Fantastic.
The wallet I won't sign, but the book I will sign. Yeah, I'll sign the wallet for $100.
You have to find sign, right?
Yeah.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
So I guess without further ado, then we will bring up our panel, Jim Blasco, and who else do we have on the panel, Adrian? Brian.
Santos.
Oh, then I guess I'll hand over to you.
Okay.
Thank you, Bobby.
Thank you, Michael. More microphones.
Turn it over to the OGs.
Check 1 2.